So phones these days are pretty pricey, and Chinese phones seem to have significantly more value, especially when it comes to looking at the spec sheet and then comparing that to the price. So I picked up a Xiaomi Mi 9 on Amazon, and I live in Canada, so it's not officially sold here, but I bought it on Amazon, and I wanted to see how it compares to something like a Galaxy S10. They both have triple cameras, and they both have the Snapdragon 855, but one is half the price. So I wanted to know, what exactly am I missing out on with that huge price gap? So here's 10 little details that are negative, 10 little details that are positive, and then you can make up your own mind as to whether or not this phone is right for you. So the first thing that it's missing is manual video controls. Now, if you're watching this and you have a phone that doesn't have that, you may think that's really not important, but I'm coming from LG phones. Every LG phone I've had, every new LG phone that's come out, they all have manual video controls, and once you have it, you miss it. The second thing is a bit bigger, literally. It's the camera bump itself. It is a really large camera bump, and I don't personally mind because I always put a case on it. The problem is this one is so big, the case that came with the phone, minor detail plus there, doesn't actually cover the camera bump. So I still end up hitting the camera on the desk when I put it down, even with a case on it. It's ridiculous. The next one is the lock screen shortcuts. For some reason, I can't specify what they are or change them or remove them. My friends have this habit of stealing people's phones and taking a whole bunch of pictures, like thousands of pictures from the lock screen. And of course, I like to disable that on all my phones. For some reason, Xiaomi does not allow that on this phone. Okay, the next one is double tap to sleep. So this phone, along with many others, have double tap to wake, but I'm used to using an LG phone, which also allows me to double tap on the status bar to put the phone back to sleep. So double tap to wake, double tap to sleep, it makes sense. For some reason, this phone doesn't offer the ability to send it to sleep, only double tap to wake. Just a little annoying. Okay, the next one is a specific thing about notifications, and that is I can only dismiss them by swiping them one direction. I can't swipe them the other direction. It brings me over to that menu thing. It's a little bit weird. It doesn't work that way on any other Android phone I've ever used. I don't know if that's something that is in Pie and everybody else is changing back to normal. I'm not sure, but it is really annoying, and again, they don't let me change that. Okay, next one's a bit bigger. I cannot change cameras while I'm filming. Yes, it's great that I have 3 different cameras to choose from, but when I hit record, I may want to change halfway through my video recording, and I can't. So if I'm on the regular lens and I want to switch to the ultra-wide lens, I have to stop, switch to the ultra-wide lens, and then start recording again. Although, at least I could record using all 3 lenses. OnePlus 7 Pro. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, the next one is the always on display. This is something that's a key functionality of most phones these days, but this one is missing notifications, which is a big deal, even though it has the notification LED there. But the other thing is it doesn't seem to have auto brightness, which is weird and not a big deal during the day, but when I'm trying to sleep at night and it's beside my bed and it's illuminating the whole room, it's kind of ridiculous. Okay, the next thing is the in-screen fingerprint reader. It sucks. Galaxy S10 also sucks. Not a big deal. This one may even be slightly faster. The problem with these is that I can't use them unless I'm looking at them. I can't find where it is without looking at the phone like I can with a regular capacitive sensor. It also misfires a lot. The space is rather small, so you have to be really particular. And I think having it on the back of the phone wouldn't be that big of a deal. So it's not really helping anybody. It's not making the screen any bigger by putting it in the screen. The screen could have been the same size with it on the back. Okay, the next one is a really big one, and that is there's no optical image stabilization on any of the 3 lenses. Now, on a spec sheet, I haven't previously thought that that was a big deal, especially when you're looking at video. You know, the electronics and the electronic image stabilization seems to be what's doing most of the work anyways, and it's amazing. So I thought, you know what, OIS, not a big deal. Unfortunately, it is a big deal. I find that a lot more often my photos are blurry because, you have a shaky hand or whatever, and OIS helps with stuff like that. I've always had OIS on most of the phones that I'm using, so the fact that I'm now missing it, I'm just noticing it a heck of a lot more. So it is potentially worth investing in depending on what phone you're looking at. Okay, the last one is a big one. So this is the notifications are hidden. I don't know why. I can't see them up in the top left corner. On top of that, when I'm using them, the scrolling through them doesn't seem to work very well. If I have like a long page of notifications, I can't scroll through them without just hiding the tray. I know the way that stock Android did this works perfectly fine. So Xiaomi specifically changed them to work this way for MIUI, and it's a terrible change. I don't really care if you want to change up stock Android to make it better, but If you're changing it to make it worse and you're not giving me the option to opt out of that change, that's a major problem. Now, to be fair, it is something that could be fixed with software, but I've even seen people online, there's like workarounds to get your notifications to show up on top of the clock, and like, why would anybody need to do that? That's ridiculous. It should just be there by default like it is on every other Android phone. Okay, let's get into some of the positives. The screen is flat. I've used curved screens. They look really nice when you're holding the phone, but the top and bottom of the image distorts when you're looking at a video or showing someone a photo, accidental screen touches. YouTubers are starting to finally talk about this, which I appreciate. It is really annoying. I know it looks great, but function over form when I'm using it every day. Okay, the next one is just a spec sheet thing, but it turned out to be pretty decent. 960 frames per second slow-mo at 1080p rather than 720 like most other phones, including the Galaxy S10. Yes, it is significantly sharper, but the problem still remains. It only records a very short period of time, and so if you don't nail it right, you can often miss your subject. 240 or 480 at 1080 is definitely going to be a lot better. This does 240 at 1080, so it's the Galaxy S10, so it's a bit of a draw on that one. Next one is the button on the side for the Google Assistant, and again, you can customize it. I have it set so a long press is for the flashlight. You can do double press things and so on and so forth. Really nice to have a customizable button, especially if you use the Google Assistant often. Okay, the next one is the notch on the top. When notches first came out, I absolutely hated them. This one is significantly smaller than most notches. Now, I've used the punch hole on the Galaxy S10, and there are some cases where that's actually better. If you're watching a widescreen video and it actually doesn't block, because it's kind of tucked up in the top corner, but I find the symmetrical notch is a little bit nicer. It actually ends up taking up less space overall, because if you count the border around, or if you count the space kind of behind the punch hole there. Anyways, the punch hole is not as good as the teardrop notch. Okay, the next one is a change that Xiaomi made to Android that I appreciate. Stock Android is good, yes, but Google's not perfect. Not every decision that they make is the best decision, and the recent screen on Pi is terrible. I can see about 1.1 apps. It's pretty ridiculous. I remember there used to be cards that would scroll up and down back in the day on Android, like ice cream sandwich, and I could see way more of my apps. So MIUI does it in a sort of a weird way. There's 2 columns worth, but the point is I can see way more of the apps as I'm scrolling back through them, and I appreciate that. So that's a change that Xiaomi's actually made in MIUI that is, it's unusual. It looks a little bit different. You're not expecting it, but functionally it's really great. All right, the next detail is a small detail that makes a big difference. The power button is in a normal location. It's not way up high on the side of the phone like the Galaxy S10 is. It's where my thumb expects it to be. I don't really like big phones. I would count this as a very big phone, but having the power button in the right spot helps a lot. The next one is night modes. Just a short thing on that. There is a night mode built in. It's not as good as Night Sight. You can get a Google Cam port that has Night Sight. There's ways around it. Again, using it on all 3 lenses is tricky. Different ports that I've found work with different lenses, so you may have to have a couple of different apps, but I think at this point, Google's is the best that you can port to any phone. I think Huawei's is potentially better, but can't really get that on a Xiaomi at this point, so yeah, the built-in night mode's not terrible, but it's usable. Okay, the next one is a small spec sheet thing that I was hoping would make a bigger difference than it did, but it is an improvement. The wide-angle lens has autofocus. Every LG phone that I've owned or has come out recently does not have autofocus on the wide-angle lens, and the Huawei phones do. And I remember using them and thinking, this is really fantastic. You can get right up close for a macro shot. Galaxy S10 does not offer it, but the Xiaomi Mi 9 does. So I checked it out. The minimum focus distance is not as close as what the Huawei phones are, so it's not as good for macros. And you don't have optical image stabilization, which again makes it more likely to get blur in your image. But it is nice to have, again, especially if you're taking pictures of something up close, but you kind of want that dramatic wide-angle look. You can do that with this phone. You can't do that on a Galaxy S10 or an LG phone. Okay, the next one is a big one. Manual camera controls for all 3 lenses. If you're going to advertise a phone that has 3 lenses, don't limit certain features to certain lenses. That's really frustrating. When I used the Galaxy S10, the manual camera controls were limited only to the regular lens. I couldn't use the other 2. They may change that in software, but that was my use case at the time. This one allows me manual camera controls of all 3 lenses, and I can specifically pick which one I'm using, which I appreciate. The manual mode is not as good as LG's manual mode. It has the same problems that Samsung and Huawei have. The auto setting in manual mode is one setting way off to the side. So if the automatic is set to 1/20th and I want to switch to 1/24th and I'm on auto, I have to swipe all the way across to go find 1/24th. Whereas LG, it'll be right there and I just move it one notch. So it's just something that LG has traditionally done much better than everybody else, but I do appreciate having it here. Okay, the final detail on this phone is the price. Again, it is literally half the price of a Galaxy S10, at least here in Canada. And so when you're looking at all these whiny little details and pros and cons, it is a massive one that you have to keep on the list. It's not a $50 difference, it's a massive price difference. And I think it's a pretty ridiculous value for what you're getting. So hopefully me whining about all these details was helpful. You can decide whether or not it's worth it to upgrade to something like a Galaxy S10 or save your money and get something a Xiaomi Mi 9. If you want to leave a comment down below, feel free to do so. Other than that, thanks for watching.